Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s hands-on review. But before we start, please support us by pressing the like and subscribe buttons, so that we can continue to provide the latest information about gadgets and technology. Also turn on the bell button to get the latest updates. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you. The Redmi Note 10s is yet another smartphone from Xiaomi in the crowded Redmi Note 10 series. This one is being launched in India amidst 3 other Redmi Note 10 models, including the Redmi Note 10, the Redmi Note 10 Pro, and the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max. The Redmi Note 10s sits between the Redmi Note 10 and the Redmi Note 10 Pro, being largely identical to the Redmi Note 10 but with a better camera and chipset on paper. It is, however, closer to the Redmi Note 10 Pro in price than the Redmi Note 10, so that camera and chipset better be good to make you want to buy this phone instead of just getting the Pro model. But then again, that may be the plan. Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s specs at a glance. Body, 160.5 by 74.5 by 8. 3mm, 179 grams, IP53, dust and splash protection. Display, 6.43 inches AMOLED, 450 nits, TUP, 1100 nits, peak, 1080 by 2400 px resolution, 20:9 aspect ratio, 409p. Chipset, MediaTek Helio G95, 12 nanometers, octa-core, 2x2.05 GHz Cortex A76 and 6x2. 0 GHz Cortex A55, Mali G76 MC4. Memory, 64 GB 6 GB RAM, 128 GB 6 GB RAM, 128 GB 8 GB RAM, UFS 2.2, microSD-XC, dedicated slot. OS/software, Android 11, MIUI 12.5. Rear camera, wide, main, 64MP, f/1.8, 26mm, 11.97, 0.7 micrometers, PAF, ultra wide angle, 8MP, f/2.2, 118, 1/4.0, 1.12 micrometers, macro, 2MP, f/2.4, depth, 2MP, f/2.4. Front camera, 13MP, f/2.5, wide, 1/3.06, 1.12 micrometers. Video capture, rear camera, 4K at 30 fps, 1080p at 30/60/120 fps, 720p at 960 fps, front camera, 1080p at 30 fps. Battery, 5000 mAh, fast charging 33 watts. Miscellaneous, fingerprint reader, side mounted, infrared port, 3.5mm jack. The Redmi Note 10s is also the first phone in India to launch with MIUI 12.5 out of the box. Xiaomi is calling this an interim version of 12.5, which means it lacks some of the features of the final release, but we will just have to see about that. Unboxing. The retail box isn't special by any means. It contains the usual user manuals, a USB-A to USB-C cable for data transfer and charging, a transparent silicone case, which is pretty hard to put on and remove, and a charging brick rated at 33 watts. Just like its more expensive sibling, the vanilla Redmi Note 10 boasts an IP53 certification against water and dust. And it's one of the few Redmi to have it too. However, don't expect the phone to be fine if you submerge it into water. The IP53 certification ensures against splashes and rain, for example. But unlike the Pro, this one has Gorilla Glass 3 for its front, instead of Gorilla Glass 5, and the back is made of plastic, not GG5 again. The frame is also plastic, but there's nothing wrong with that. The handset still feels pretty good in the hand. It's thin, 8.3mm, and light, 178 grams, mainly because of its almost all plastic build. It kind of feels less slippery too. The deep sea blue variant that we received shows fingerprints and smudges on the back easily. Our review unit also had odd patterns embedded in the plastic that were impossible to wipe. As we are still on the back, we can't miss mentioning the rather minimal protrusion of the camera module. We find the camera design to be pretty nice, too, and it doesn't seem to be bothering us with asymmetry. Additionally, the side panel edges are a bit more curved than usual and make the handset feel slimmer while improving the overall grip. Flipping the phone reveals decently sized bezels all around, with the bottom one being slightly thicker, which is to be expected. The side frame and the top bezel seem roughly symmetrical in size. The punch hole in the middle is a bit on the larger size compared to Xiaomi's more expensive models, but not too distracting. The sides are where things start to get interesting. The frame is so thin that it has been widened to accommodate the power key and the volume rocker. Both seem to be a bit bigger than you'd expect, and the unusual part is that the power button, which doubles as a fingerprint reader, isn't indented as you'd normally expect from a phone with a side-mounted fingerprint scanner but raised like a standard button. As we have noted in some of our recent Xiaomi reviews, with this raised side-mounted fingerprint reader, the performance is hit or miss. Even when you firmly plant your finger on it and press the button, most of the time the phone will just turn the screen on instead of unlocking the phone. You then have to raise your thumb and touch it again for the sensor to work. Fortunately, you can set the sensor to unlock when you just touch it rather than press it. This makes the sensor work a bit more reliably, but there were still times when touching it didn't cause the phone to unlock. Also, the problem with switching the unlock method to touch instead of press is that the phone will angrily buzz at you every time the sensor comes in contact with any skin that isn't a registered fingerprint. The bottom and top ends of the frame are flat and adopt a matte finish instead of the glossy one for the rest of the frame. The top side has a port for the loudspeaker, the IR blaster, and a microphone. The loudspeaker port is just an additional grill for the speaker placed underneath the earpiece grill, so even if you block this top port, it doesn't change the sound output. Similarly, if you block the earpiece grill for some reason, the audio then comes out of the top port. On the bottom is the slot for a second loudspeaker, a USB-C port, a microphone, and the increasingly rare headphone jack. On the left side is the tray for SIM and external storage. It can hold 2 separate nano SIM cards as well as a microSD card, so you don't have to compromise on one or the other. Curiously, Xiaomi still marks the microSD slot as TF. The TF here stands for Trans Flash, which some may remember as the original name for the microSD standard. The Redmi Note 10S has the same display as the Redmi Note 10. It's a 6.43-inch AMOLED panel with 2400 by 1800 resolution, 60 Hz refresh rate, and 8-bit color. Xiaomi claims the display is capable of DCI-P3 coverage, has 1100 nits peak brightness and 700 nits typical brightness. During our testing of the Redmi Note 10, we found the display to perform very well in terms of color accuracy when the phone was set to the standard color scheme within display settings. We also managed to get close to the 700 nits claimed typical figure, but couldn't quite reach the 1100 nits peak brightness. We don't expect these results to match the Redmi Note 10S exactly due to panel variants, but they should be very similar. Regardless, the display on the Redmi Note 10S performs quite well, especially for the price. As mentioned before, the Redmi Note 10S has a 60 Hz display. For those not used to a higher refresh rate
Thanks
display,
for watching.
which would be most people shopping in this
Drop a
price
like,
segment, this shouldn't
leave a
be
comment, and don't
However,
forget to
we still would have
subscribe
liked see
to
at
watch
least
more
90 Hz
videos
refresh
like
rate, as
this.
60 Hz just doesn't pass muster these days, and the extra 30 Hz can make a world of difference. Xiaomi does not advertise the Redmi Note 10S as having an HDR display.